back here at the shop, URA Taxidermy. We finally found an evening where we have a little bit of free time. We were able to pull this bird out of the freezer, and Jordan's going to take you guys step by step on how to mount this turkey fan in this, kind of standardized wall plaque that you can hang on your wall. These wall plaques, you can find them on Amazon, through any kind of taxidermy distributor. People sell them on Etsy, or you can even elect to make them for yourself. And then she's going to be able to put that beard in there, and then we're going to figure out a way to keep them spurs as well. So that's what Jordan's going to do step by step. You want to tell them how you're going to do that this evening, Jordan?
Yeah. So first thing that we'll do is we obviously have a lot of meat and stuff left on here. So I'm going to cut these feathers apart, clean up the quills, flush it. I may wash it off a little bit because it can be greasy. Put some borax on it, and then we're going to lay it out, tape it out, and then Bondo it. And honestly, that's about it. After that Bondo hardens up, it'll be ready to put in the plaque. So I'm ready for the first step of the process here. All you need is a really sharp knife. My personal preference is a number 11 scalpel blade, and we are going to get ready to make some cuts. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel back this layer of feathers. So these feathers are your back feathers. They're what stand up on the turkey when it goes into full strut. And then this layer of feathers, we have like our secondary tail feathers, and then the big long ones are primaries. So in between that is the oil gland, and this is just where we are going to cut to separate. The easiest way to know that you're cutting in the right place to separate these two groups of feathers is your oil gland right here. Every bird has one of these glands. It's what they use to groom themselves with. So there it is right there. Okay, so for our first cut, I just have these feathers pulled back here, and I'm going to cut just right down through here, right down through the skin. These little feathers, it's not a big deal if you cut through them. They're obviously not going to show in your fan mount anyway, so we're just going to get started. I'm going to start here at the oil gland and just cut straight across here. And I'm kind of cutting at a diagonal, not straight down in, because if I cut right straight down, it's just cutting down into these tail quills. So cut at a little bit of an angle to get it to separate. Well, I mean, like, it's not going to actually cut through them. It's just going to prevent.
I know, that's what I'm saying. But tell them why you don't want to cut through it, because you're going to need them to secure the Bondo, right?
Yeah. So, and the reason I say go at an angle, you don't want to try to cut through these, because we're going to lay the fan out and the Bondo is going to adhere in between these tail quills, and that's what's going to hold the fan in place. So I've got through this side, so I'm just going to start over here and do the other side of the fan, cutting down at an angle. And I'm just separating these two feather groups. And you can see all this oil here that's in that gland. And so now all of this here is meat, and then this part is your skin. I'm just wanting to take the skin off, because we're going to get rid of that meat here in just a minute. My number one goal right now is to just get this flap of skin off. I'm just peeling it back. Like, I can see here this hole, like I'm getting to the front of it here, which is where the skin ends. So here you can see it's starting to separate. Just got this little bit left to go. Okay, and there it is. So now here we have it. We have our tail, and then we have this little group of back feathers that we have separated from the fan. And so we're going to keep this group. We're not permanently separating it. I just find that it's a lot easier if I do it in two separate parts. I can get this very clean, and then I can get this very clean, and then I can just incorporate them back together to make a very nice uniform turkey tail mount. So I'm going to set our back feathers aside right now, and then we're going to get to work on our main tail feathers. Okay, so I'm going to flip our turkey tail over, and I'm going to start cutting on the back. So the tailbone actually runs up in between, and you can't see it, but I can pick some of these feathers off so it's visible. The tailbone runs up in between the middle of the feathers. So my scalpel blade tip is pointing right at the top of the tailbone here. So we want to strip this tailbone completely out, and it's going to take all of this meat with it. So I'm going to start cutting. So the biggest mistake that people will make is also cutting the skin. And if you completely slice the skin, you're going to end up slicing your turkey tail completely in half, and then you're going to have two halves. So that's kind of what we want to avoid. I'm just going to try to peel it back here. It's a little dry. And then I'm just going to go down at an angle. From each side. Okay, so now I'm going to grab a pair of needle nose pliers, and I'm going to grip the tailbone and give it a little twist just to pop it out. Okay, and just give it a little twist. And they come out in two sections. Yep. Okay, so there it is. You can see I've popped that out. We still have a little bit up in there that I'll take out in just a minute. But the biggest thing is if you grab your index finger and just pull back on it, it starts to separate from the tail. So now I'll take my scalpel blade and just begin cutting all of this bone and all of this meat away from these tail quills. Okay, so now I'm just cutting away this meat. And there we go, it starts to pop out. So now at this point, I'm going to flip it back over, just like that. And then just push up with it, and there it is. Now I'll cut through this meat here. And then there is our tailbone and everything that comes with it. And this is garbage. Okay, so now these two groups of feathers, if you're not careful, you'll mess this up. These two groups of feathers are connected by this skin here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in at an angle, completely flat, and cut in between these two groups of feathers. If I cut all the way across, it's going to completely separate them. So I want to leave about, I don't know, a quarter of an inch, half an inch on each side. That way the feathers are not separating and they're staying together. So I'm going to start like right here. Here's my starting point. And then I'm just going to slice across very carefully. And now Don't go all the way across. Stop about right here. Now, what that's going to allow us to do is push up, and then you can see all of the nasty, gross fat that's exposing by separating those feathers. So I'm going to clean off as much of this meat as I can. It's just going to be a little easier once we take it to the flushing wheel if we go ahead and get a bulk of this off. Please excuse the chirping of our chickens. We have 12 little chicks in our brooder, and we have them in the shop right now, so that's what you can probably hear in the background. I'm just going to cut this off. And this has not got to be perfect either, because I'm going to take it and run it up against the flushing wheel to get this extremely clean. So now I'm going to flip it over. And then same thing on the back, I'm going to take this meat off. So I'm just cutting away this meat. Same thing over here. Okay. Now, while I still have it turned over this way, I'm going to do this side, and then I'll flip it over and do the next side. I'm going to take my scalpel blade, and I'm going to cut in between each of these individual tail quills. So that's just going to allow me to be able to take the flushing wheel and really clean in between these quills. So I'm just cutting in between them like that. Same thing over here. And just cut down in between each quill. And now I'm going to just pop the rest of this tailbone out. There we go. Now I'll flip it over. And I'll kind of do the same thing to this side, just to make sure I've got it well. I'm going to push these back and get on up in there. Same thing, I can just carefully do it to the secondary row. Okay. And at this point, it is now ready to take to the flushing wheel and clean the rest of this meat and fat off of it. Okay, so now we're over here at the flushing wheel. This is my homemade flushing box. I like to use it on my turkey tails, turkeys, geese, swans, any of my big birds, because it has a higher horsepower. So if you don't have a bird flusher, another alternative would be you could try like a very stiff bristled wire brush. You could try one of those drill attachments that you can put on a drill, like a wire brush. Either one of those options would work. For me, this is what I use. I love it. It works great. And we're going to be able to get this incredibly clean. All this meat, all this fat is going to be completely gone. Okay, so I'm going to start with the quills facing inwards, and then the tail feathers are going to be facing out of the box. This thing is going to throw all this meat and all this fat, and I want to keep it off of the feathers and keep them clean because they're already clean. And if I don't have to wash a turkey tail, I don't want to because I think if you wash and dry it, it never looks exactly the same as it did before. So we're going to get started. I'm just pulling back with my thumbs and separating these two layers of feathers to really get up underneath there. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the fan. I want the quills facing in the same direction as the wheel is turning. And we're just going to try to get in between these really well. Okay, so you really can't beat that. That's obviously incredibly clean. Once we put a little borax on it, we'll be able to like pull off some of these stragglers. But that is a pretty clean turkey tail. Okay, now I have it over here at the sink, and I'm just going to rinse off any of this extra greasiness. I'm going to use hot water. And I just want to get these quills wet. Okay, well, there, I just splashed water on the fan. But I just want to get these quills wet, and I'm just rinsing off the greasy part down here. You can use a little bit of Dawn if you want to. Honestly, this tail's not really dirty. It cleaned up pretty good. Okay, so now that we have our tail feathers clean, I've grabbed these back feathers and we're just going to lightly flush them as well to clean them up. Okay, so similar concept, except this is just like one big piece of skin, and we're just wanting to flush this fat off of it and expose the quills of these feathers. So I'm just going to lightly apply pressure. I cannot apply as much pressure to these as I do the tail quills because it will rip through the skin. Turn it around. Like you can see, it'll very easily rip through the skin if you apply a lot of pressure to it. Okay, so you can see all these little quills have been exposed. And we're going to take it and rinse it, and then it'll be ready to go just like the tail. Same thing, I'm just going to take hot water and just rinse this off. Just like that. Okay, so now I have my box of borax. I've taken a cup of it, and I'm just going to pat dry our quills here, and then dip it down in some borax to help preserve it. Just dipping it down in it. I can take a little bit and just sprinkle on top here. And then I'll just tap that off of there and then set it aside. And then I'll do the same thing to our feathers that we cut off the back. I'll just lightly put a little bit of borax on those. And there we go. So I'm going to cut off our oil gland here. We don't really want it on there. Here it is right here. I'm just going to take my scalpel blade and remove it. There it is. And we'll throw that away. Our next step is we are going to position our feathers. And to do that, I'm going to tape them with this Scotch Blue painter's tape. That's my personal preference for feathers. So we're just going to start fanning them out here. And typically turkeys have 18 tail feathers. So with that being an even number, it can be a little awkward to figure out which one goes in the middle. But usually, like, I can see this one is wanting to lay on top. So this is going to be like my middle feather there. I like to start from the outside and work my way in. I'm going to take a relatively long piece of tape here and just start on my end feather. And I like to perfectly evenly position them if I can. And this is not permanent. You can take this tape off and make adjustments if you feel the need. Okay, so there's my first side, and then after I do like this little portion of the fan, I like to do the same thing to the other side of the fan, just to make sure I'm keeping things even. We'll just fan it out here, nice and evenly. Okay, now we're going to work on our middle feathers here and just make sure that they are evenly spaced, just like the others. Here's our two middle feathers. This one is wanting to go on top, so that's the way I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to do one more little piece of tape just to bring these together. Okay. So there we have it. We have all of our primaries fanned out. Now we are going to work on properly positioning our secondary tail feathers. If you have a feather like this one that's a little bit wonky, just take your two fingers and just kind of zip it back together. So for these feathers, they're kind of opposite of our primary feathers. I've got this big long one here, and it's going to go right in the back, right in the very middle. And then all of these are just going to follow over it, like so. I like to get them as even as I can. Okay, and there we have it. So now I'm going to take 2 pieces of tape and just do one down each side. So our first piece of tape is just going to go right there. And then our second piece is just going to cross that just like that. Okay. So now we're going to take our feathers that we took off the back and we are going to position them over top of our tail fan. These are going to lay just over top, just like this. And if you want to be like perfectly perfect, you can position each one of these. I'll start from the back here and just kind of lay them where I kind of think they should go. It can be tougher though. I'm just gonna, that one came out. We'll leave it in there. It'll Bondo in. This feather here is broken, so I'm just going to take it out. And then that's just going to lay. All right, at this point, we have everything laid out exactly how we want it, and we are ready to put some Bondo on this. And then as soon as that hardens, it is good to go in the plaque. Okay, so I'm just using our basic Bondo here, and it doesn't take much. I'm going to put it out on my clean sheets. Just a little bit. One more scoop should do it. Well, that was a puny scoop. Okay. So this is plenty of Bondo to do the entirety of that turkey fan. And then we'll put our hardener in it. The more hardener that you put in the Bondo, the quicker it's going to set. I don't want to wait on this forever, so I'm going to put a fair amount in it. Just one little line. And then we're going to mix it up. I also have just 2 pieces of plastic. You could take a Ziploc bag and cut some pieces off of it. We're going to mix this up and put the Bondo down on here and then put our turkey fan on top of it. And then put a little Bondo on top of the turkey fan and then put this piece on top of it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and set these on here to carry over to the turkey fan. Alright, so now we're just going to mix it up. You want it completely incorporated. You don't want any streaks in it. It should all be blue. And now we're going to take it over to our turkey tail and set it down in it. And don't forget your 2 pieces of plastic. Okay, so now I'm going to take a scoop of this Bondo and put it down on this plastic, just like that. And then I'm going to lift up and just push back our back feathers. And then you're going to take a pair of tweezers and grab your tail and just push it down into the Bondo. All those quills right down into the Bondo. And now, while this is exposed, I'm going to take another A little bit of Bondo here. And we're just going to cover that really well. And then I'll take my tweezers and grab my back feathers. And then make sure your gloves are clean. Just push your back feathers down into the Bondo as well. Then I'm going to take just a tiny bit of what's remaining and smooth it over top. Take your last piece of plastic and just press it down into the Bondo. And I put quite a bit of hardener, so it should harden up pretty quick. I'm going to just take my hand, I'll go ahead and take this glove off. Just take my hand and put pressure just to make sure that the tail is hardening up flat. And if you want to, before it starts to harden, if you need to make any little adjustments to these feathers, you certainly can. And then I'll just hold it flat and wait for that Bondo to start to kick and harden up. Alright, so now our Bondo has started to kick and it's at a rubbery stage. I'm going to peel off our top sheet of plastic. Then I'm going to grab the scalpel blade that we used earlier and I'm going to cut a straight line across the bottom of this. That way it sits down into the plaque completely flat. And don't let your Bondo completely harden because it's going to make this really difficult. Right now it is at the rubbery stage. And this is just a nice straight flat line. I can now, it's at the point where I can lift this up and I'm just going to flip it over and make sure that the back is clean. I'll go ahead and peel this off. And I can see my line is not like perfectly straight. It's a little bit cockeyed down here. So I'm just going to clean that up. There we go. Alright. Okay, so now I'll flip it back over and I'm just going to leave it laying here. It needs to sit here for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so till this completely hardens up and then we'll be able to screw it into the plaque. While we're waiting for the Bondo to harden on our tail, I'm going to grab a hot glue gun and we're going to head back over to our plaque and work on putting our beard into the plaque. This particular plaque is already sold with like a pre-slotted place for the beard. So if you know you want to put your beard with your turkey fan on the plaque, make sure that you're getting one with the beard slot in it. Before I go to putting glue up in there or anything, I want to test fit just to make sure it's gonna fit up in there. Sometimes I have to squeeze it, and in this case I am. Just to see if it'll squeeze on up in there. There we go. And all of this white and nasty looking stuff that's coming off of there, we can take a blow dryer and just blow that right off. One thing I like about this particular brand is this beard was a very tight fit. However, if I flip it over to the back, you can see this little slot right here. I find it handy for just putting the glue gun right down in here, and it puts that glue down into that beard slot and secures it without you having to try to take the beard back out and then put it back in, which, like I said, is especially convenient for this particular one because it was a tight fit up in there. Okay, so now I'm going to take my hot glue gun and just put a nice liberal amount, if I can get it going here. There we go. Right down in that slot to secure the beard. And there we have it. Now I'll flip it back over, and the beard should be secure. Okay, so now I have brought the plaque over here. Our Bondo is totally hardened, and I'm just going to take the tape and peel it off. It's been about 30 minutes since we mixed the Bondo and put it on. Typically, like, Bondo will heat up as it's curing. So kind of my rule of thumb is once it's cooled down, I say it's hardened enough to go ahead and screw it on. Okay, now I'm just going to take a drill and I'm going to flip our fan over and drill a hole. This is just going to be a pilot hole for the screw that we're going to run down in it. So just right here at the edge. Now that we've drilled our pilot hole, we're going to take our plaque and flip it over. And this little piece of like galvanized wire, you can bend it back just slightly. And then your tail should, nope, I'm going to have to bend it a little more. Your tail should just slide right down in to this little slot. Okay, now I'm just going to take my screw, make sure it's not too long. And I'm going to make sure that our tail is centered. And then just screw it in. Okay, so here we have it. Here is our finished product of our just basic turkey fan mount with the beard, and it is ready to hang on the wall and enjoy for many years to come.
So there you have it. We hope you guys enjoyed this video. Really looking forward to sharing some of these experiences with you guys in the future with some, deer hunts and duck hunts and things of that nature. So we did already put this turkey in the crock pot and put it to good use. Jordan's got a good video up of some homemade turkey dumplings. Check that out. It's on the channel. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and good luck this turkey season. Thanks for looking at Woods to Wall.